thank you to everyone for coming to our Tour Like a Pro webinar. So we're doing best practices for converting visitors into residents. My name's Ryan, and I have Michael here with me from Welcome Home. And I'm going to give him just a moment to introduce himself, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'm on the. My name's Michael. I'm on the sales team, as I mentioned, from Alpharetta, Georgia. Been with Welcome Home for the past 3 years, but helping the industry for the past 5 years or so. And everyone has their own unique way of getting into the industry. A lot of people have fallen into the industry, so hopefully we can continue to pave the path to more education to how great our industry is. But been helping the industry for the past 5 years. Love it. Don't ever see leaving it. And happy to be here and thankful for Accushield inviting me to be a co-host with Ryan here.
Yeah, absolutely. And my name is Ryan. I'm very close to Michael over there in the Sandy Springs, Roswell area. So not, I guess we could say South Chattanooga, but same idea. Grew up in senior living industry, worked in communities and all different departments, all different aspects. And now over here at Accushield talking about how we can work together with groups like Welcome Home and provide more value to the communities and just make people's lives a little bit easier. We know you have so many things swirling around in your head on a daily basis that we want to try to automate some of those processes and maybe give you somewhere to throw some of that information that's in your brain back down somewhere. All right, let's go ahead and hop right in. So what we really wanted to start here is really talk about senior living sales is different than any other sales out here. So let's start with, we know we're B2C, meaning we're a business selling to a consumer. We're not selling me to Michael here as two businesses talking to each other where we're discussing return on investments and monthly recurring revenues and the automation and some of these things that get really deep down that rabbit hole into why would somebody buy on a spreadsheet. But when we're dealing with families and we're dealing with residents and people's lives, can't really live on a spreadsheet there and can't really sell on ROI. So what we do as senior living advisors, not just salespeople. That's one thing I always talk about. Like, we're advisors. We're here to help somebody through the next stage of their life and next stage of their journey. So if we're able to take that position on, we're here to help. And that our goal, and this is something I talk to all my salespeople about, and I sat there as a salesperson on these tours saying the same thing. Our goal as that salesperson in senior living isn't to get you to pick my specific community. It's to get you to choose senior living as a viable option for that next step of your life. To talk about the socialization, the efforts, what communal and shared services can really do for a person is where we always start. And if we take that approach of, we're selling care, we're advising people on care, and we're advising them on the next steps of their lives, on positions that they've never been put in before, we can truly make a difference and help and avoid some of those experiences where, I'm sure you guys have all heard of them, the community next door offers a 4-month move-in deal special. They move in right there. 2 months later, they're out. And now they're at your community and a little bit wary of the senior living experience as a whole. We want to help you guys get started off on the right foot right away, get residents you want, and help match them up with communities that they want to be in.
Yeah, and absolutely. And as far as the industry goes, I mean, we're at such a ripe time to be in this industry, to be serving senior living for our older adults. And so seeing this as an opportunity just to uplift the community, the industry at large is, we're at the cusp of something great. And so the more that we can provide an excellent tour experience, provide an excellent community experience, the amount of potential we're unlocking is truly profound. So I think the more that we can refine this, the more that we can professionalize it and make it a great place and a great option for residents, I think we're then not necessarily competing with the home as much. We're more so just allowing residents and allowing more potential future residents to come into our communities and see how wonderful it is. Because there's a lot of data that's out there that we've barely scratched the surface in terms of the people that we can reach. And so more like-minded people on webinars like this and beyond is a great place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't be said any better, Michael. And something you said there, I think stood out, and we'll come back to it later, is about placement. That's what we're doing here. And there's a reason that a lot of referrals services and aggregators call themselves placement agencies, because it's about finding that best fit and that right fit. And we're going to talk a little bit more about those and the relationships with the community. But speaking of some of that data, Michael, this is your expertise. Let's hear it.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that. It's not my expertise. I try to get my my team, the smarter people in the room, to bring this to light. And so I have to shout out our customer insights team, specifically Elena Dawes, who's on this call. She helped gather all of these insights together. So at the end of the webinar, we'll make sure to provide her contact information if there's any follow-up questions, because everyone knows that I won't be able to answer those, and she'll be able to help. But I think starting at the state of the industry is a great spot to be in, in terms of being really proficient and great at what we do. I think a foundational start is just knowing our numbers. How can we understand what industry averages are? What are the common move-ins? So we're seeing 83% across the industry. Now that does include independent living, memory care, assisted living. So those numbers obviously are going to be a little bit different across different care types, and also by different regions and urban and rural. So there's a lot more nuance that we can get into. But how do we as sales counselors know to get to our goals if we can't know our numbers? So understanding, like, what is my conversion ratio? If I've got this move-in goal, this, ubiquitous number that I'm shooting for, it's like 5 move-ins or 6 move-ins, but I don't know what the inputs that I need in order to get to that number. I think that's a critical gap that we as sales people sometimes can miss in all of the craziness that we do. So my encouragement today is take some of these numbers, kind of run it up against what you're seeing, and start trying to track, start trying to understand what is my ratios and how can I further improve. And again, I'm not a mathematician, but simple things like moving from a 29% inquiry to tour to 32%, you annualize that, you look at that over the course of the year, that's a huge difference in the amount of residents that we can impact and help move in. So knowing these numbers, and I always like to be able to share kind of just current state of where we're at.
Yeah. And Michael, I think that was great what you were talking about there. The one thing to mention on my end of things is, let's talk about where our strengths become weaknesses and weaknesses can become strengths on something we're working on. So we can look at this and see our occupancy is 83%. Budget needs us at 90 by the end of the quarter. Do we determine based off that move-in ratio, are we getting enough leads and we're just not converting? Are we not getting enough leads? And that's why so if we have a 90% move-in ratio, but we're only getting 2 leads a month, then we know the problem's not your salesperson. We know the problem is maybe the marketing approach we're taking. And we can target, our budget, our efforts in that specific way, rather than saying, as all operators know out there, sales need to go up. We need more sales. It's okay, that's great. We want more sales, but let's dive into the how and the why.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, a little bit more for us to talk about here is, this is, I think, something that everyone has experienced or everyone's comfortable with going forward. The journey starts online. And whether you're looking for an apartment, senior living, even colleges at this point, no matter where you're looking, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to Google. We're going to get on there and search senior living in my area, best assisted living in Atlanta, best assisted living in South Chattanooga, wherever we want to go. So most of our tours are starting right there. So we have to make a great first impression right away. It's not just now when you walk into the building and that smiling concierge is the first person you see. The first person they see are the reviews online, are photos of your building, are what do you have right there coming up. So we do have a poll question that's hitting right now about how do you manage your prospects and pipeline. So if people want to throw that in there, we'll keep talking about that in a little bit. But Michael, anything that you've noticed on your side of things with Welcome Home about that first impression, beginning on that website and capturing that lead from someone's own website rather than, an aggregator?
Yeah. Well, I think it's good to know the amount of connections that we're making from those online leads, right? So, a lot we're seeing obviously that 3 and 4 number coming from online. So I think understanding if the residents are prospective residents are coming through online chats, how are we optimizing for mobile? How are we optimizing for better speed to lead? I think one of the crazier examples of if we are prepared and ready for taking some of these inbound leads is that if you can reach out to some of these prospects that come inbound within like 5 minutes or so, the chances and the data that we've seen, the chances of you scheduling that tour go up about 400%, which is kind of a crazy number to think about. Now, I'm not sitting here and saying we have to get there by 5. I think it's a good starting point to understand that there is correlative success when we are talking about speed of lead. So it's not just this fictitious thing. It's like, hey, let's just get speed of lead. We think it helps improve results. No, it's very quantitative in terms of what we see as increasing those numbers. So one of the takeaways from this is how can we see, right? We see a ton of people coming on from the online journey. How can we mobilize? How can we make sure that we're equipped to respond in a fast way? And it doesn't always have to be the salesperson to do that.
So just getting that ping out there, starting that conversation with someone who's already interested. That's the big difference versus if somebody comes in on their website, submits an inquiry that comes through Welcome Home to the building, we know that person's already a warm lead. They're interested enough that they are open to someone reaching back out to contact them. So last thing we want to do is be afraid of contacting them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about pre-tour excellence, Michael.
Yeah, so leave it up to me for going into more of these graphs and charts, but I like seeing information like this. Now, if you're on the webinar, you're like, oh my gosh, where do I start? That's why we kind of color code it with green, good. Salespeople need really easy things: green, good; red, bad. So looking at this, getting a good grip on your schedule, I think is a great start to being able to schedule out tours just in advance. We'll talk a little bit about, I have another question on when we think is like the most prevalent tour day, but understanding this, I just kind of wanted to give a quick call out to the call map and the texting map. So what we're looking at is the frequency of responses and calls that we see. And we're seeing really peak hours. So like the bulk of our calls that come inbound, 19% of those are coming in on Tuesdays. So do we have a very heavy tour schedule on Tuesdays? It might dictate the way that we schedule things out in advance. If I know that I'm texting and calling and doing a lot of engagement and follow-up, maybe Tuesday's not the best day to schedule as many tours. And so communicating that with your team. Now, we are in sales. We have to do whatever it takes. So if they want to tour at 5 o'clock or on a Saturday, absolutely. It's time to be prepared for that. But these numbers give us a good idea on when people are talking to us when they're not in the building, which should dictate our schedule when we are touring in the building and when we're scheduling things. But the quick question that I wanted to ask is, I guess we could ask a two-pronged question, but when do we think is the most prevalent for tours? So when do we think that there are the most tours happening Monday through Sunday? Feel free to go through on the chat to give us your best guesses. And I'll give you guys a couple of seconds here to come in and guess. So let's see. I think it might be surprising. And then we also have a window of time where we think it's the most prevalent as well. So we've got a day and then a time of day that is the hottest time to schedule for tours. So we're getting some Mondays here. Wednesday, okay. Monday, Wednesday, love it. I told you.
It's important as we're talking about some of these things. I mean, more tours are great. We want to be overwhelmed. I'd love to be a salesperson that has too many tours in a given day that I can't get to, that I need the help and I need the support, which is why we'll get into a little bit on making sales a team goal, that we want 7 managers that you're comfortable with picking up a tour and taking it whenever you want.
Yeah. All right, so I'm seeing a lot of Thursdays and Mondays. So I think Monday was the biggest one. It's actually not. It is Friday. So 20%. I don't think anybody guessed Friday. Friday, it comes in at 20% of your tours happen on that day. And it typically, what we see is between the hours of 2 and 4, about 33% of those tours are happening between the 2 and 4 window. So find it fascinating that afternoons are when tours are popping off. Everyone's excited. I find that a lot of families are still working. So maybe that's the time where they can take off, and that's, they get the opportunity, and they, okay, shout out Danielle. Thank you. You guessed Friday, and you know what? You crushed it. So, yeah. So Friday from 2 to 4 is that. So again, just more good data to suggest on when we should be scheduling out our days. And also, a lot of our jobs are inside and outside of the buildings. So maybe the Tuesday time frame or the Wednesday time frame is good when we can schedule out some refer partner activity, which we can talk about later.
And Michael, you touched on it there a little bit on the reasoning. I always like to know the why behind things, and obviously traveling in and out. So when we think about this, seniors move a lot of the time for two reasons. It's family moving closer to them or them moving closer to family when this comes into play. So obviously one person has to travel to the other. It's difficult for that person to get there if they're working that full week, take off a little bit early on Friday, mom or dad's come into town to check out the new communities, and you start going through those. That's one of the real reasons we're looking at this is we have to take the travel into account. And the idea that a lot of the people who are paying to be here, they are the kids, the adult children who have full-time jobs and full-time lives and kids and other families. And now they're being put in that middle of that primary caregiver.
Yeah.
So it's like we talked about before. We are advisors in this situation as best as we can and not salespeople. And if we can put ourselves in the shoes of who we're selling to and who we're speaking with, we can provide a better service and be more prepared for those Fridays and Saturdays when those tours do roll in.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to put a cherry on top with the rest of the insights, I think that this is interesting to know in terms of like the pre-tour insights. So on average, it takes 2 calls, 2 emails, 1 text to schedule that tour. So again, it is trying to allow you to get a good understanding of what type of effort. So what are the inputs that we need to schedule these tours? And so if our goals are to just for simple math, get 2 move-ins, then on average for that month, we're going to have to make for those prospects about 4 calls, 4 emails, and 2 texts. Now, that is just very rudimentary information. Obviously, it just can't be generic emails and generic text, but it does give you just a good baseline on this is the averages. This is what I probably need to set myself goals to. And, of those 2 calls and 2 emails and a text, we find the top performers try to stand out in some way, shape, or form, right? And that can look very different from one sales counselor to the next, especially depending on what we've learned from that prospect in general, right? So if they're big on texting and not calling, that number could definitely go up a little bit more, maybe less calls. We're seeing a lot more text usage, about 200% increase from this time last year for texting, which means that our adult children might be trying to, like what you said, Ryan, they might be working full time. They might only be able to text. They might be trying to slide a couple of texts at work just to schedule some of these tours or get their information. So meet your prospects where they're at and try to be as creative as possible, which we'll talk a little bit more about the ways that we can be creative, but seeing really good success with sales mail videos and 1-day videos to really stand out, to really connect, put a face to a name before that tour actually happens.
And again, we're selling directly to consumers. What you just said about meeting them where they're at is fantastic. It doesn't need to be that professional email every single time on a following up or circling up or touching base or any of the other jargon that we see all the time. Sometimes it's as easy as shooting that person a text and saying, "Hey, Michael, saw you're interested in, West Village community. Would love to have a conversation or get you into a tour. Shoot me a text back when you're free and we can talk some more."
Yeah.
Just sometimes that easy is really what people are looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And then this is when it gets to some of the, some of this is welcome home related, right? So shameless plug to the automations and the time savings that we can create for you guys. So this is, I just took a screenshot of the demo environment that we have, but this is just a small microcosm of what we can do and help. But basically try to take as much of your sales framework and try to automate some of the things that maybe are the mundane task that you typically have to do. The screenshot example is a tour reminder email 24 hours in advance to that tour actually happening. I think it's important to try to automate some so that you can have more meaningful, impactful activities, at your disposal for face-to-face, because that's really where we see, folks moving the needle. But try to figure out all the things that you would like to take away, automate it, eliminate it. I'm a big proponent right now of Chat GPT, which I always say Chat GBT. So feel free to correct me there. But there's a lot of ways that we can expedite the process, but still keep it personalized. So instead of maybe having automations within your framework, your sales process, maybe we have some prompts that that could easily help build and help run your sales framework in terms of your sales follow-up. So if you do use Welcome Home, reach out to your customer success manager, figure out some of the things, like maybe take some mental notes on, man, I always need to send out that email right before to my leadership team, but I just don't want to do it. It's just too much of a hassle. Let us or other people be able to automate that. And then, figure out ways where you can get other people involved. So I said the creative follow-up prompt, it doesn't have to be something that's like an email or text automation. It can just be a reminder that says, hey, let's go ahead. Remember, after the tour is done, I want to be reminded to send out something very thoughtful. We see really, really strong conversions from that post-tour to deposit once people are really intentional with their follow-up gifts. And then the last thing here is, planning time reminder. We see our top performing communities, about 1 in 5 salespeople. What was the stat? Elena's going to kill me. So it's 1 in 5 prospects that have a planning time that was scheduled or completed within a prospect profile, meaning there's our top performers, our top sales counselors are trying to set intentional planning time with their residents. So making sure that we're thoughtful, engaging, and getting all the details, garnered and closing out within yourself. That way you can have a very, very tailored and catered approach to all of your prospective families as soon as they come in for the door.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense there. So we're moving on a little bit to, we talked about the outreach. We talked about them finding you online. We talked about how we first interact with them. So now it's time to put it all together when we get that prospect to show up. If we've gone through all of these steps so far, we know they're a qualified lead to begin with. Maybe they haven't qualified yet financially, but we know there's interest in the building. There's a reason they're reaching out, and we're going to keep going from there and try and see if we can, find a fit for them. So that really goes into that first impression. I'm sure you guys have walked into plenty communities, whether it's your own or someone else's, and you go, oh no, why would they do this? Or where is everyone? So some small things having together are, having their room actually prepped that you're going to go tour. Have you walked that tour path? Do you have fresh cut flowers? Are you baking cookies to cover up any chemical smells that things have been cleaned on? Do you have someone ready to offer coffee, tea, in clean glasses or clean mugs? Are the move-in packets set for them? We don't necessarily want to include, if we have cottages, all the way with our assisted living and memory care materials. We want to get somebody what they're there to look at, the pricing they need, and not overwhelm them, because we know it's a long process. But the one thing I can harp on more than anything else is walking your move-in path, making sure, not your move-in, your tour path, making sure everyone also knows that, we're touring assisted living today. I'm seeing room 212, 217, and 320. These are the rooms. They're together. They're vacuumed. They're smelling good. The AC is working. The lights are on. And we know we're ready for someone to actually go in there. Because as we all know, there's nothing worse than you walk somebody into a room that you're expecting to be put together and maybe the maintenance cart's in there. and the baseboards are off and the carpet's not clean and hasn't been changed yet, you never want to have to apologize for a room you're touring. And even in those situations, it's very important not to apologize. You talk about, well, you're seeing our, maintenance team in action. You're seeing our turnover. We do this before every new resident moves in to make sure you have a fresh, clean, and apartment that's as new as it can possibly get. But first impressions, smell, cleanliness. If you have Accushield, which shameless plug on my end, we can clean up that front desk a little bit and make it look nice and modern. But all of those things are very, very important to when you're entering a building for the first time. Everyone I'm sure here has, rented an apartment or bought a house at one point. And if they had that bad experience on, showings, more than likely probably didn't get that one. So
Yeah.
now, Michael, let's talk a little bit about staff preparedness on those walk-ins.
Yeah, and to echo the point, Ryan, I think just I love because when we did the first call and you brought that up to me, Ryan, on just not apologizing, that really resonated because I think that we as salespeople are just people pleasers, and we really just want this like the excellent tour experience, and it's a good thing to aspire towards. But there's going to be flaws, imperfections. There's going to be things that you're just going to be like, oh my gosh, we're going to laugh about that later. We could have a whole webinar on crazy run-ins after tours. So just be confident in your product, be confident, and they don't know what they don't know. So I think that it's a great call out there. And then as terms of the walk-in visits, I think getting communication. So overview and scheduled tours during stand-up meeting. Everyone most likely on this is already doing this probably, but I can't emphasize this enough. So we first want to protect salespeople's times, right? So we typically want that salesperson to go first. And then share just the overarching schedule, what tours are happening, what assessments are happening, like how can we get that continuity between ops and sales. But I think another good call out is just to have a living, breathing document of a tour tree. So it might be old school, but I really liked having just a laminated tour tree and having a list on your schedule out. So it can be just like, hey, Monday through Friday, here's our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 options in case people are busy. That way you're the maintenance director or the physical plant manager or anybody else that might be doing these tours are going to be expecting to be doing a tour if that sales counselor is out or doing a double tour. I remember doing a lot of double tours, and that's actually some of the best times because it shows that there's a lot of interest in the community. So it shows, there's a lot of things that are happening. So the call out on the tour tree, and this might be a little bit of a hot take, is that I believe that salespeople should have dedicated hours outside of your selling hours, right? So it's not all about selling. It's not always about, hey, are you missing out on these income producing hours and activities? Like that's not everything. One quick way to build rapport with your community and make that tour tree super robust and easily, salesperson never really wants to have a tour tree and talk about, hey, can you do my job for me? Set out time where you can be productive and helpful for your other pieces of the department of, hey, is there anything on the assessments that I can help out with? Can I come with you? Can I take notes for you? Can I do anything? Can I help in the kitchen? Can I help serve areas? Make that a part of some of your break and make that part of, maybe like a time to decompress from cold calling. But man, is that super helpful to let people know that you are not just in it for the sales, you're in it for the better of the community. And that makes that conversation so much better when you are trying to schedule the tour tree. But that's the ownership and, after hours. But we also are seeing, so on the Accushield side, we already talked a little bit about the tour timing, seeing 11 to 4. So just be prepared. Those are the times that we're seeing, especially in the afternoon. So maybe making that 8 to 11 window really admin focused. And how can we make sure that we're walking the tours, walking that path like Ryan mentioned, and making sure that our communities are spick and span and ready to show.
So we do have another poll question that just popped up around how do you guys capture those walk-in leads? Because everything Michael and I talked about to this point here was all based on the idea that they reached out to us first. We were prepared for them, we scheduled them, and now we're saying, good problem. We have people walking in off the streets, means they're qualified means they like the area from the outside and they're here to check it out. Something to remember, it's not remember as much as maybe keep in the back of our pocket, is salespeople can set up a schedule similar to MODs as well, to where on this day, I know that my food and beverage director is my backup. And on Wednesdays, my activities director is my backup. And you always have that person, people to jump in and prepared to take that tour. And they know what's going on, what rooms are ready, similar to an MOD where, this is their weekend or this is their night, they stay late. We look at those same kind of things for touring. And that way we get everybody bought in on tours. There's a culture of what goes into a tour, what goes into selling, what goes into advising, and really helps people meet the community a little bit more. So their first interaction with that nurse or that activities director isn't when they show up to that first activity or show up to an assessment. So that transitions nicely into what we're talking about here is how do we create memorable moments during the tour? There's litany of ways to do this. Some of it we can collect through, welcome home when they come in and ask, what are the interests of this person? What do they like to do? Do they like playing cards? Is it happy hour? Do they want to be on food committee? Something we talked a lot about is schedule the tour around those activities. If you know that somebody likes to, sit down and have a beer with their friends, do you have a happy hour group? Do you have a happy hour time? Something we've always had some success with was drop off dad at happy hour, tour with the kids, then afterwards pick dad up and let's have a conversation about some of these rooms and some of the pricing. If it's a foregone conclusion, they're moving in somewhere anyways, and it's up to the kid, let's go ahead and make it a memorable moment for the resident. Because what we know we're not selling units, we're selling communities. If we were selling units, we would all be in apartment sales. And, you may not know who lives on either side of those walls, but that's not senior living. We're a people industry, and we want to keep it that way by helping people fit into the community rather than the other way around. So one of the ways we can create those meaningful moments are with staff engagement. So if you have an Accushield kiosk, you come up, you sign in for a tour, and what we'll do is immediately send out a text message to all your managers or whoever you'd like, saying that a tour is there. I'm sure anyone in here who's in sales has had an experience where they've had a prospect left at the front, 10, 15 minutes on their own. Nobody's talked to them. Nobody called you to say they were there. Maybe you're back in a meeting with an ED, and then you run up there and you have to apologize. In that situation, I said don't apologize earlier, but that's an apology one if we have a scheduled time where nobody came to see us and we can get started. But that's the big thing is, again, sales is a joint venture. We want everybody involved, everyone moving forward, which is why we'll even print out a tour group badge that's a little bit different from, a prospect or, primary contact or third-party care. So staff, when they see someone on a tour, can either engage or know to look out and know that people are coming in and we're all involved in selling. So something that I've always found very important as we are selling is if I know someone's looking to move into assisted living or memory care, make sure one of your nurses or one of your directors in that area has 5 minutes free. That person's going to be so involved in their lives that it's really important to get that introduction and find if there's a level of comfort or a level of just understanding of the situation. So you can move that forward a little bit without having to be like, oh, you're going to love our nursing team. We have the best care in the area. You don't want to have to be in a prove it situation. We want to start this relationship on trust and move someone in because they want to be there, not because they're being forced to, when we know that's the case a lot of the time is people don't want to leave their homes. They may have, family members that are urging them to come in and choose something that they wouldn't have on their own. So really knowing your audience is what that comes down to. Do I know that if I'm touring with Michael here and Michael is, 85 years old, lived in his home for 45 years and doesn't want to leave, but he's having a little bit of mobility issues, having some issues, getting food and cleaned up and put together and everything all day, then I know that to Michael, I need to sell him on the community because the care, the focus, he thinks he's great. Never going to leave his home, never going to do anything differently. And that's fine for him. But his family may want him in there and may want him closer and may want that peace of mind knowing he's getting healthy meals, he's getting somebody to attend, there's emergency response. And so we sell differently to those different people. So we're selling peace of mind to Michael's family, and we're selling the lifestyle and the community and the family that becomes your own when you move in. So it's really important to align some of those things. If Michael's a poker player, bring him over for poker night. There's no, it's really hard to do a try before you buy in senior living with anything but food and activities. So let's use those to our advantage. We're putting them on anyways for our residents. Use your residents to be your spokespeople. Talk about the things that they like and the things that, make it a community. It's really difficult sometimes when you're sitting in a position as I am to sell to someone who's not a peer. So you want to use their peers as much as you can to sing your praises and involve again that staff, that nurse, anyone else in the sales process. Make them show that it's just not me and them that are being interacted with on a daily basis. It's everyone in the community. And if we can have that culture shown by 5, 6 different people that they meet, it goes from, oh, I met Michael and he was a nice man and made me feel comfortable towards everyone at the village was fantastic. Every person I met was smiling, was nice, was energetic. It really makes a lot of difference when you say we met multiple people and the whole feeling was warm. First, I had a good experience with one person. So, which
Yeah.
leads us towards our strategy here, Michael, of sit tour sit. You want to tee it up?
Sure. And just to be clear, Ryan, my family will definitely want me in a community faster than not. So I actually can't wait for that day. So sit tour sit. I think that's one of the, I'm sure a lot of people understand or have come across this type of philosophy. I think it's great. Now, not everything is just going to be a cookie cutter process of sit tour sit. Talk about some nuance on personas that you might be talking to that might just want a little bit quicker of a tour. But this, I think, philosophy is a good framework to get just a good grasp on how can we best get all this rich information at the front. So that's that first sit, taking that information, expelling it out and sharing on the tour what you've learned, really demonstrating how we've taken in really good notes from both that first sit and then also our first discovery call. And then that final recap of sitting next, I think is a critical piece just to put everything together, tie it all in, and recap. I think understanding, and we'll talk a little bit more on future slides here, but that first sit, super, super critical. I cannot emphasize this enough. And again, if you're in sales and you've been in senior living, I just cannot emphasize, you cannot have that first sit experience again. So think about that. You get one chance to really dive in deep, get to know just the emotional state, what's going on in their life, learning about their family, their residences, their accomplishments, motivators, their likes and interests, and all this good information that really should be you're filtering everything and saying, how can I make sure to connect this dot to this next one and say, she loves dancing. I know, just kind of how you were talking about it, Ryan. How can I make sure that this is not just a normal experience? Because what we know after this tour happens, they're going to go back to their family members. They're going to sit everything down. They're going to get all those brochures. They might have 10 pies that they're sifting through that everybody gave them. But what's going to stand out is that sales counselor knew, recapped, had a good follow-up next step, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and then had a really great experience. So that's that first sit. And then going through the tour is just making sure that we're introducing to everybody in the community. Does not matter position, rank, whatever, resident, even if it's the cranky resident that you're like kind of timid to like, oh no, is she going to badmouth the community? And it is so critical to make sure that we as the educators know every single thing about our community and can speak, ad nauseum about it. I remember doing a tour with a family member and they were sat down at that second sit and they were like, honestly, this was the first time that we went through a tour and you actually knew the resident's name, which is like not a shout out to me. That's just more of like, why isn't that like the normal case? And so that's also goes back into how are we taking time just to understand and learn more about our residents? That is going to play a part in the way that we can have really good tour best practices. And then of course, just sharing, sharing the starting pricing of the rooms. I think that's a good starting point. I mean, I'm always the person that's like pricing transparency is king. The more that we can share this information on the front end gives more confidence and more quality leads that come into the community. But like Ryan mentioned, I think having the starting rates is really good, right? So having something where it's like we can ground people, we can anchor them in that price, and then be able to share more value, because the last thing we want to do is quote them a wrong price, which Ryan, you can talk a little bit about.
Yeah. And we're going to move through some of these next ones a little bit quickly here to be cognizant of time. But the second sit to me is really what ties the whole tour together. You have to be able at the end of the day, and this is hard as salespeople, this is asking for the check, if we're being honest. This is sitting back down and this is taking the feedback, the good, the bad, the ugly, and saying, is this a fit for you and your family or not? And we have to be able to ask those questions and have those conversations because, again, we're advisors. This is where the objections come up, the roadblocks. You can dig into the financials of what is good and what's not. And this is your chance as that salesperson to look back and go, you know what? I know you really want that independent living room that's all the way across the building and quiet, but I noticed mom walks with a cane. And I think mobility may get to be an issue and we want her a little closer to the dining room in maybe a little bit smaller area. That's your job as that salesperson and the advisor. Just nudge, not force, not push, but maybe nudge and use your expertise and have that candid conversation. It's going to be very helpful and save a lot of time and money on everyone's end by the end of the day. So to keep rolling here, we're going to talk about post-store strategy a little bit. And Michael.
Yeah, we'll breeze through this. I feel like I've been throwing out a ton of numbers, but again, feel free to screenshot this information. I think it's helpful. But this is the post tour analytics. So this is typically so if you do simple math based on that pre-tour insights plus the post tour, I mean we're looking at about average of 20 activities from start to finish. So understanding your numbers on the post-tour insights, I think is a good spot just to understand how to reach those goals. So we can move past this one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And for the just ongoing engagement, I think we've talked about it a ton, but most importantly, we are the educators in this. So how can we educate? How can we be really comfortable and confident in our approach to saying, hey, in order for me as a sales counselor to best serve you, this is typically the path that we take. So this is ideally after you've done that second sit, you've got those next steps scheduled, you're ready to go. But if you don't, saying this is the typical path forward, the reality is that our senior sales or our prospective families, this is their first time going through this process. So treating it like that, we're the experts, and it can be easy for us to be like doing 100 tours and it's like, we're just trying to knock them out. But take a pause, be the educator, and then say, hey, what we found to be very successful is, I've learned a little bit about Mary. I think a good opportunity to meet with our nursing our clinical team. Maybe we can do an assessment here. Happy to do this at the comfort of your own home. We can do this over lunch at our community. Does not matter. We just want to get to know Mary a little bit better. So giving them a clear expectation. The first one of clarity wins in sales and just in life. So get to clarity, put their mind at ease, and help them understand what's that path forward so that they can help make an informed decision.
Well said there. And personal touch, we've talked a little bit about on here. There's automation you can do with Welcome Home. You can have those follow-ups when a tour ends, but also handwritten notes, and include those handwritten notes. Sometimes we say gift cards. Sometimes we say tickets. Another little trick is have it be a gift card to your restaurant. Have it be a gift card to your bar, a ticket to, a party that you guys are hosting. Those kind of things that draw people back in the community to see the events you're putting on go such a long way. Okay. And now we're trying to get into what I look at as really the partnership between Accushield and Welcome Home here, and how do we leverage that feedback? So something that Accushield can do is after we have that person in for a tour, we can go ahead and we can collect feedback that you won't be able to get at that table. Michael could take me on a tour and go, how was everything? I go, it's great. But then afterwards, I get that survey text and I want to give them my true feedback. I want to say rooms 2 and 4 smelled awful, and the food was terrible. And I can send that feedback in, and like we said, good, bad, or ugly, we can learn from it as salespeople, and we can get things changed. But the idea to automate that and just have that sense to be able to collect some of these information that someone wouldn't tell you face to face gets really valuable. And we do have another question that's going to make some sense here in a minute about what was your referral tour volume over a given month? And we're talking about the leads that come in from a place for mom, the after 55s, caring.coms, any of those, because that's really where our partnership ties up with our integration with Welcome Home here. So I know some of those are coming in, so I'll just pause just a moment and then we will go on to this. Okay. So we are right here. So what we are working on, Accushield, as we and Welcome Home, is about never losing a lead again. So we discussed, what happens when you get somebody who comes through a traditional channel, a website, a phone number, a referral source that comes through your Welcome Home integrations. So Accushield has integrated with Welcome Home and partnered with Welcome Home to deal with the unscheduled tours, to deal with that lock-in that where somebody comes in and they go, I'm in the area. I just wanted to tour around real quick. Maybe you get that food and beverage director who's between meals. They give a tour, they shake hands, and they go, all right, see you, Michael. Great tour. Maybe, you'll move in a few months. Goes away from the top of mind. It's out of our head. But now 6 months later, that person's ready to move in. We never had a follow-up. We never had anything down on paper showing we gave this tour. And they come in as a lead from a place for mom. So that person that you toured, you already teed up, getting ready to move in. You now go and move into your community and you have a $5,000 invoice. We know that happens over and over and over again. And it can be frustrating to know that you had somebody on a piece of paper or you met that person and you weren't able to capture that lead as organic. So at Accushield, at the very beginning, we're going to capture that lead, that name, that relationship, contact, and we're sending that to Welcome Home immediately as a prospect. So if anything ever comes back from a place for mom later, you're going to have duplicates, you're going to have that digital timestamp, and you're going to be able to get that invoice thrown out when somebody comes back looking for it because you were able to capture that lead and that prospect. The scenario I've seen more than anything is, a couple who's very independent tours far before they need it to be prepared. And they said, maybe in a year or so, we'll need to move in. And let's say all heck breaks loose when somebody has a fall. They come out of skilled nursing and now they immediately need to move into a building when you don't know where to do or who to ask for help. That's where these caring.coms and a place for mom step in. And so our goal is to have that person who already vetted you, who, if they live in the area, they're more than likely financially qualified already, and they already had enough interest to start doing some pre-planning. In our perspective, that should be a lead that is yours to capture, and you shouldn't have to pay an outside source for it. So that's what we are attempting to do, is allow those local leads and those walk-ins to stay local, to stay at your community and build a stronger process within your community of those leads that may not seem so urgent. So we don't have to turn around and pay, $10,000, $20,000 out in a month for all the hard work you guys are putting in.
Yeah. And it's about to echo that. And it's also just in terms of a data integrity standpoint, I can't tell you how many times that there was just missed information, right? When things are busy and you don't get to capture that first name, last name. And when people come back and do that second tour, or if something were to happen, it gives them a better feeling that they know that you remembered them, right? Like you don't have to know the intricate details on why they first came in the first, that first time, but being able to call them out by first name and saying, yeah, hey, I think I remember, you visited our community a couple of years back. Like, how are you doing? What's going, like, catch me up. A lot can happen during that time. Just gives a really good customer experience. But just another plug just to integrations in getting best in class systems, talking back and forth with one another, just uplifting the overall sales experience.
And if we do have a tour scheduled in Welcome Home, when that person gets the Accushield kiosk and they go to sign in, they're going to see their name right there.
Yep.
Just ready to go, that the community's ready for them, welcoming them. It's similar to a practice we used to do where when you go to tour a specific room for someone, we put the name on the door just to see if you could picture someone living here. When you see your name somewhere, whether it's, you taking your dog to the vet and they write up, we're going to see Chance here today on that board, it just makes you feel a little special that somebody took the time to know you were coming that day and to be ready for you. So here's some of our key takeaways, and then I think we'll have just a few moments for some Q&A. So we want to prepare thoroughly with personalized information. Welcome Home does a great job of capturing that right away, and Accushield can solve for that if we have those walk-in tours right on the kiosk, and we're pushing all that information back to Welcome Home, working together in tandem. We want to create memorable moments through our stories and connections and make sure we involve everyone in that sales process. We want to talk to them like they're people. I know there may be some younger salespeople and people new to the industry on here. Seniors aren't scary. That's the biggest thing that we need to get over. A lot of them, when we're touring, they're just at a fork in the road for their life. They may have had some care issues. They may have had a bad experience with the community, or they're going through this for the first time, loss of a loved one. We want to be there and create those connections because to you, it may be a job, but to them, they're moving in their whole life. Continuously improve using visitor feedback. We can collect that through Accushield and, push the good ones to Google. Actually, we push all of them to Google. But the average we have is over 4 stars on that, which is shocking. That really determines that people like leaving good feedback more than they like leaving bad feedback. They would rather call and fix the problem themselves and talk directly with the person than going out and blast online. So we constantly are taking those reviews and that feedback and getting that up there to be higher up on Google search results. We want to integrate technologies for efficiency and enhanced experiences. Sure, we could go ahead and buy an all-in-one solution that are out there and nice, but wouldn't you rather pick something that works for you as the salesperson and then have the best-in-class solutions that all speak to each other as if they were your own platform? Just having the same logo going back and forth, to me, it's a secondary thought. And then we want to maintain that meaningful engagement after tours. We want to be doing those follow-up, those touch points that Michael brought up. And if it was sales and it was easy to do, everyone would be doing it. There wouldn't be a need for a job. If people would walk in and sign on the dotted line day one, we'd all be thrilled. But we've all done those things and we know that's not the way it happens. So that's really what we would like everyone to take away from there. I know Michael and I, contact information is going to be shared, and we're more than happy to discuss anything with you, your teams. And we have a few moments if we have any questions or comments coming up right now.
Yeah, and while any questions come in, just want to thank you all for carving out the hour to go with us. Hopefully there was some good takeaways, but like Ryan mentioned, if there's any questions and you guys wanted to chat offline about some of the things that we talked about, whether it's Welcome Home related, not Welcome Home related, we're always open for a good conversation around senior living. So yeah, thank you guys.
Hang here another moment or two and go from there.
And I've also gotten some emails as well, which is great. Yeah. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. So we're all experts, and our closing ratios are all going to be 90% after this, and we're all good to go.
Yeah.
Oh, Q&A.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you guys wanted to, if you have, we're going to be sending out this webinar to everybody, but if there's specific screenshots that you would want to like put in presentations or things like that, happy to send those over as well. That way you can be a champion presenting in front of your team, in front of your organization with this data. So happy to provide that as well.
Did see a few questions come through. So first, the integration with Accushield and WelcomeHome is live. So that's just an activation. There's no additional costs to do that. We would turn that on for your communities if you have both. And I saw someone else ask, what's the difference between Accushield and WelcomeHome? So WelcomeHome is a CRM. So managing your sales process. Accushield, we are that visitor management system that sits at your front desk, and we just work in tandem with Welcome Home. So yes, we have a dashboard, but we try to use that more for the security of the building, who's coming in and out, managing third-party care, visitors, volunteers, and we leave up the tour end and the prospect management portion to Welcome Home. So we're taking that information, collecting it at that tangible touch point, normally right at the front desk, and packaging it up to go to your sales management software, which is Welcome Home. Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, if I did a okay job of describing you guys.
Yeah, crushed it. Yeah, that's absolutely it. And if you wanted to take 15 minutes to learn more, again, I'm going to reply back to a comment here, provide my email. So if you have any questions about Welcome Home or the differences or how the integration works, we'll get you pointed in the right direction here.
So I saw another interesting question that came in. It says, how do you handle a tour when they have had a negative experience from a senior living community? And my perspective, I've dealt with this many times. I would say I would like to say it was a Class A building next to a Class C. So a lot of times when rent's half the price and both buildings look new, you're going to move into the cheaper one. And 2, 3 months go by, they come over, maybe it's the meals, maybe it's the care. One of the biggest things I do is let's talk about all the negative things. Let's get it all out of the table. What did you not like? Let's get those objections, and then let's honestly address all of those. Let's determine, is it a true operating issue? I've heard horror stories on people moving into communities that cost them $4,000 a month, and the meals for a week are peanut butter and jelly and mac and cheese. So one way to put that to bed is sitting them down in your dining room, going over the menus with them, but building trust with the chef or the activities director, or having them tour at different parts of the day where you actually have staff on the floor. One time I always remember going back and doing an orientation from a new staff member who said, thank you, for this. And we're like, what do you mean? It's just an orientation day one. She goes, I'm not the only one here in this memory care unit. I have coworkers. So taking things for granted is something. If you are a good operator and you care about your buildings and your residents, you're already a leg up over a lot of other buildings and a lot of other groups out there. So it's just important to honestly address those. But my strategy and strategy was always lay it all out there. Tell me everything bad that's happened, and I'll show you where we will do everything different.
Yeah. And I think to that end too is really understanding if it's a true issue, because there's sometimes, again, I never want to not be always kind of in sales mode here, but sometimes their complaints are just part of being in a community. I don't want to know how else to put it. So it's really questioning, hey, what's going on? Validating their concerns, being empathetic, but also this might be counterintuitive too, but sometimes letting the other community know that this is happening and say, hey, listen, we just had a tour come in. They mentioned that they were coming from your community. Can you give me some background into this? Because maybe they could share a two-sided story of what's happening. So I'm not saying to do that every single time, but just really getting a deeper understanding of what's truly going on and whether you can actually solve that so that you can give a really great resident experience. Because the worst thing that can happen is that person has a bad experience and then has the same thing with you guys because of just unclear, unmet expectations.
And Michael, being honest, sometimes you pick up that phone, you call that community, and that salesperson goes, please take them.
Take them.
It's happened.
Yeah.
So it's, due diligence both ways, back to the idea we talked about right fit for the community, right fit for the resident.
Yeah.
But
Totally.
if we don't have, anything else coming through, thank you everyone for joining us today and, participating, giving us some good questions and allowing us to have this conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for everything, Michael, and everybody else. And we'll talk to you next time.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.